ogres are like onions.
Fie Fo Fum. Where do ogres come from? You'll be surprised. This is Rabbi Yossi Madvig, and you're listening to Jews Did It First. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe, leave a review, could really use the help. And as always, if you'd like to donate to help contribute to the podcast, please go to jewishiswego.org/Jews Did It First. Just click the make a donation button in the upper right hand corner. So, as I've mentioned, it's October, so we're going to be going through some creatures and beasts that are Jews Did It First material. And we've done Frankenstein, we've done werewolves, and this week, which may be the last one because October's coming to an end, we're going to cover ogres. Now, ogres are like onions. They've had somewhat of an ambivalent history in literature. Usually they're ominous and scary, but in modern times, they've come to be sometimes seen as kind of soft and lovable in a certain sort of way, like Shrek or in Goonies. The official definition of ogre is a man-eating giant, basically, according to the dictionary. And the first time it seems to have appeared in literature in the West, anyway, the word ogre, anyway, is in a 12th century French poem called Percival, and it just mentions the land of the ogres. But the concept itself of ogres actually comes up, quite a bit. Maybe the famous one is more recent than that one, an Italian one, which is and it's also in French, is in Puss in Boots, this cat who, it's a really interesting thing. The cat basically goes through all these tricks to get his owner to be able to marry some princess. But at one point, he's got to convince the king of this princess, the father of the princess, that the owner is actually this great man. So he goes into the castle of an ogre who can change shape, and he convinces the ogre somehow to change into the shape of a mouse, at which point the cat just eats him and then gives the castle to his owner. So there, the ogre's a little bit gullible, a little bit slow. And again, there's ogres coming up in stories in the 15th century, the 16th century, the 17th century. It's pretty widespread, at that point, and is mentioned, even, J.R.R. Tolkien, has orcs, which are basically, seem to be ogres, and they're all over the place. Now, you even have the concept of ogres in more ancient stories. There's lots of examples of ogres where they have appeared in Greek and Roman mythology, and it's pretty. The Cyclops from Odyssey is a good example. Also the Cyclops in Sinbad the Sailor. I don't know why there's this Cyclops idea. There's even one in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Apparently Humbaba is this big beast guy. But as we're going to see, when it comes to ogre, that's right, Jews did it first. So, how did Jews do it first? Well, there is some debate on the origin of the word ogre. Like I said, the earliest time that it comes is in this French poem where he mentions ogre. And so some feel that it's of French origin. However, I would contend that perhaps it really comes from the word og. Now, who is Og? I'm glad you asked. Og is a very famous person in the Bible. Comes up a few times. In the Talmud, this is in Tractate Nida, page 61a, it says that Og was actually the grandson of Shemchazai. Now, who's Shemchazai? He was one of two rebellious angels that told God, hey, God, look at all these people sitting down there. We could do much better. If you were to send us down as people, we would handle all the trials that people go through, and we would be much better. Why'd you create these people to screw up your world? And God tells them, look, if you do that, you're actually going to end up even worse than the people did. And they think they know better, and so God sends them down, and sure enough, they do much worse. They fall into sin, and that's when you see in Genesis 6, it describes these divine beings, calls them B'nai Elohim, mating and having relations, marrying women, and their offspring are called Nephilim. And they're powerful, and Rashi comments that their Nephilim means like Anak or Anakim, giants. And Nephilim also means fallen, from the word nofel, to fall. And so they are fallen angels. And so you have these descendants of theirs that are from these fallen angels that are giants. And there is one giant that is saved, because if you remember, there's a flood, right? So all the inhabitants of the world, save Noah and his family, are destroyed. But there was one giant who survived. How did he survive? Well, the Midrash tells us that he was allowed to hang on to the side of the ark. And Noah brought him food, and he felt that perhaps God had merited, gave him some sort of merit, that Og had merited, from God, to survive the flood. So he let him hang on there. And so he did, even though, according to the Medrash, the rain was hot and boiling and the water was unlivable, where it fell on Og, because it was falling around the ark, where it fell around the ark and Og, it was actually cool and refreshing. And so he was able to survive the flood. He consequently had descendants, and he actually fled to Israel, apparently, where it was safe for him to be. Or it wasn't called Israel at the time, obviously, Canaan. Well, if you go farther, it says in the Zohar that actually, what's the word I'm looking for? He made a deal, right, with Noah, right? You save me on the ark, and I'll be your servant forever. Me and my descendants will be your servants forever. And actually, he did fulfill this. The Zohar says that he became a servant of Abraham later on, and he informed Abraham that Lot was kidnapped. In fact, we just had this in this week's Parsha, this week's Torah portion, about the... actually, was that last week's Torah portion? I don't know. I got all confused now. And I think it was last week's, where Lot is kidnapped, and Abraham has to go and save him. And it says that Og goes to inform Abraham of what happened. Now, there's a Medrash, Bereshis Rabbah 42, that actually tells us that Og was really hoping that Abraham would die in the battle, and then he would get to marry Sarah. Now, Og was blessed with wealth and very long life, because he did the right thing. He told Abraham about Lot being kidnapped, but because he had bad intentions, he was also destined to die at the hands of Abraham's descendants, namely Moses, as we'll see later on. Unfortunately, Og continued to fall into some bad behavior. And even though he had this covenant that he made, he actually broke the covenant with God and descendants of Abraham. And he started, being nasty, and he started having illicit relations. And he used his unusual physical abilities, because he was an ogre, a giant, he was Og, to become king over these fortified cities, right? Bashan, he became king of Bashan. And when the nation of Israel tried to pass through that territory, he gathered his armies to attack them. And this is, again, centuries later that Moses is coming through. And he's got to face Og, the king of Bashan. And Moses was afraid. Listen, Og was this, aside from the fact that he was just this giant, huge person, that's very scary. But also, he lived for a very long time. And also, according to Midrash, Og was circumcised, part of this covenant that he made about being the servant and everything. When he was the servant of Abraham, he was circumcised. So he's circumcised, a big giant. He has this long life. Maybe God has some sort of plan for this guy. He's a pretty scary dude. So God tells him, "Don't worry, you have nothing to fear." And in a famous story in the Midrash, Og takes a mountain and he's going to crush the people, but what happens is God causes these ants to bore through the center of the mountain, causing the mountain to fall onto his head like a necklace, right? So he's like trapped. His head is trapped, and then God causes his teeth to grow out and get stuck into the mountain. So now he's completely stuck. And it's said that Moses was 10 cubits high, and his staff was 10 cubits high, and he jumped 10 cubits, that's 30 cubits, and he smacked Og on the ankle. So 30 cubits high, and he only smacked him on the ankle, and this caused Og to fall down, and with the mountain on his head, and he died. And this is in fact why there's another midrash, a little lesser known, that actually says that the reason Og survived the flood was just because he was so huge. So it's also important to remember the old rabbinic saying that anyone who believes that all of the midrashim are false is an apikaris, he's a heretic. But anyone who believes that every midrash is literal is a fool. So, how the literal interpretation of all this is to be taken, I'm not sure. Perhaps that's meant for rabbis of a higher pay grade than myself. But nevertheless, he was a very colorful figure in Jewish literature and in Midrash, and there's quite a few stories, as we mentioned, in the Bible itself. And so perhaps he was, because he was so enormous and powerful, that he thought he could rule the world, and maybe that was his downfall. I'm not sure. Interestingly enough, there are a number of tombs in the area that would have been Bashan that are actually massive. They're called dolmen, I believe. And they're these stone structures that have been there for 1,000 years. And they're made of rocks that weigh a huge amount. And many scholars believe that this led to this tradition of their giants being in that area. And, perhaps they are apparently around that. He's said to be 9. It's said that his bed was 9 cubits, I believe, which would put it around anywhere from 13 to 18 feet. And some of these tombs are about that size. So, it seems to be some archaeological evidence of this type. Again, I'm not sure whether or not it's exact how literal we're supposed to take it, but nevertheless, he's known and reported to be in Jewish literature this giant, and he's a pretty mean, bad dude, and his name is Og, and so I think that would clearly indicate this is where the name ogre came from, which of course, Jews did it first. I want to end off with a short Torah thought. Maybe I should have some kind of musical intro or something to the Torah thought. I think I've mentioned that in the past. Send me some ideas. I don't know. I'd have to see what it would sound like, and I don't know. But anyway, I want to end off by sharing 2 short messages. One is from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the other is actually, they're both from Lubavitcher Rebbe. One is something that he had said, and another one is from a book of his called Hayom Yom, which is a book of daily aphorisms. And the one that he had said goes, when you waste a moment, you have killed it, in a sense, squandering an irreplaceable opportunity. But when you use that moment properly, filling it with purpose and productivity, it lives on forever. So, clearly, a important lesson in using your time effectively. And the other one goes like this. From the book Hayom Yom, which is actually, this is from just this Friday's Hayom Yom, the 17th of Cheshvan. It says, time must be guarded. It is urgent to accept the yoke of Torah. Every bit of time, every day that passes, is not just a day, but a life's concern. Days go by, as the Talmud says, a day enters and a day departs. A week enters, etc., a month, etc., a year, etc. My father, referring to, this is actually a quote from the previous Rebbe. So when he says my father, he's referring to even his father. So this is, 3 generations back, the Rebbe Rashab. So my father quoted the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement. A summer day and a winter night are a year. Obviously, because they're very long, it's like a year. So the whole point here is to use our time in such a way that we're really using it properly and devoting it properly to God, to Torah, and to our fellow man. And it always comes up around this time when I'm going next week, God willing, to the Kinnis HaShluchim Ha'olami, the worldwide, the international conference of Chabad rabbis. And it seems strange because, I run a Jewish center on a college campus and I have to take time off to do it. I have to tell the students, sorry, there's not going to be a class this week. Sorry, there's not going to be a Shabbat dinner this week, a Friday night dinner. And I feel like I'm not using the time here appropriately. I should be doing things with the students. I shouldn't be taking time off to go gallivanting around New York City to be with 3,000 or 4,000 other rabbis, many of whom are my friends, and we're going to hang out and we're going to laugh and we're going to go to some inspiring talks and everything. But it seems like I should be here doing my work, working with the students, providing Jewish services, a Jewish social scene, something for the students to experience Judaism. But the truth is that even when I'm not here going for this particular event, that is using the time appropriately, because we also have to recharge. We have to recharge our batteries and be able to go and come together and unite. All the rabbis come together and we fabreng, we have Hasidic gatherings and we inspire each other. And it's not a vacation. You go on vacation. The whole point of the vacation is that when you get back to work, you feel like, man, I wish I was still on vacation. Can't wait till the next vacation. But when you come back from this event, every time I come back, I feel so inspired. I want to come back. I want to go and do more and be even a better rabbi than I am now, which, I'm sure isn't that hard. So it's not just a leave of absence, but it's energizing and it makes it fruitful. And so that kinnis lives on for the whole year where we're really inspired. And then, Mirz Hashem, God willing, next year, I want to come back and do it all over again. So again, there probably won't be a podcast this coming week because of the event, but God willing, we'll resume afterwards. I have some great ideas planned for some coming shows. And again, if you know of some things that you think Jews did first, please send me an email. You can contact me at rabbi@jewishoswego.org. Or you can contact me on the Facebook page, Jews Did It First. You can get me at Twitter @Oswego Rabbi. I'm all over the place. So please feel free to continue the conversation. Till then, Shavua Tov, and until next time.